too much. I think, yeah, yeah, there we go.
Thanks. Oh, yeah. So I was just suggesting really that this is the kind of main tactic that we've been offering our network and in Friends of the Earth, but equally it's something that could just be picked up by any group or individual that wants to take action locally, is to kind of get as many organizations, prominent individuals, influence, whoever you think it might be that will influence your local MPs. If you can get them to add their name to this letter and then send it off to your local media, that's the thing that we think could really help at this stage. Equally, we've had a couple of local groups recently, actually, in particular, just lobbying MPs directly, and it's been amazing, really, to see the sort of shift. So a couple of members of our campaign team earlier in the summer met with an MP, and they sounded kind of open but not completely on board, and our local group met with them and really followed up with sort of more information that the MP had requested, and now they're kind of really championing this work within Parliament. So I don't think you can really underestimate what a difference grassroots groups can make in this kind of in this kind of game. There's just that resonance that that with like a constituents and kind of local voices that you don't get from a kind of central campaign team. So yeah, there's something to consider if you're interested. And the other link I'll just dump in quickly is to our Friends of the Earth Plastics Campaigns Facebook group. So that's just a space really that is there for people to collaborate. I can see that Greg shared a link to the event in there, which is fab. I've seen some really wonderful kind of peer support there between some, I know, because Plastic Free Chesterfield are really experienced in terms and the way that Plastic Free Chesterfield adapted to the sort of COVID context was really impressive to me, and I know other activists have kind of drawn on that experience and expertise, and thanks for being so generous really with sharing that through this group. But it's a great place just to either to ask questions or to kind of help each other if you're struggling with something, or if you can see that somebody else needs some help and you're able to offer it, then that's wonderful. The final thing I'll mention, and I'll put a sock in it so we've got a bit of time for questions, is the plastic pollution bill. So I talked about this right at the start, I think, and said that there is a relation between this and the environment bill. And it can get a little bit confusing, but this is basically a gold standard that we have drafted with working with some parliamentary champions. This would be, if we could have our way and just make this law, we think this would do a pretty good job of getting us back on track, and actually kind of going as far as we can on plastics as fast as we can. What we're doing with the environment bill is kind of trying to take the best of this approach and getting it as far as we can, getting the environment bill changed as much as possible so that it kind of takes this kind of an approach. And the approach here is actually modeled on the Climate Change Act. So it would kind of set up an expert committee independent of government to just work through the kind of nitty gritty of how do we tackle this, and just keep the pressure on so that it does get tackled progressively over a number of years. So this was tabled in the last Parliament, before the last general election, and it's going to be retabled hopefully in the next month, and it's a private members bill. So this, unlike the environment bill, which is being introduced by government, this is being introduced by Alistair Carmichael MP, Liberal Democrat MP from Scotland, representing a Scottish constituency, and this bill can also have a number of sponsors. So in the last Parliament, we managed to get a really good cross-party group of sponsors, which gives this, that kind of cross-party support gives the bill some legitimacy in the eyes of other politicians, and we're in the process of doing that at the moment. And we've got you can have a dozen sponsors. At the moment, we've got at least half of those spots filled, and we've got sort of space for another 6 or so. I think we probably need more Conservative MPs, and maybe another couple of another Labour MP or 2. All of the Labour sponsors we had are now in the shadow cabinet in one form or another. So it's great that they, those champions are kind of in influential positions within the party, but we need to kind of fill those gaps that they've left behind. And I just wanted to mention this because if you've got an MP who is kind of really looking for something to do, one thing is to say, when this amendment to the Environment Bill comes along, then vote for it and vote for the other, the other amendments that I mentioned earlier. But if, in particular, some MPs, government Conservative MPs, might be a bit reluctant to kind of vote against the government. So some of you will know that's called rebelling, and it's happened once. It happened on the agriculture bill. A group of MPs felt strongly enough about an issue that they decided to go against the government, their own government. It's possible we really need a similar number, if not more, to do the same this time around for our changes to be made to the Environment Bill. But some MPs might be a bit nervous about it, and this is another way for them to demonstrate that in principle they are supportive of this level of ambition. Like I said, this is kind of the gold standard, so they can kind of say, well, I fully support that level of ambition, and if they're particularly keen, they could consider sponsoring it if they're quick in the next month or so. It could get tabled in the next couple of weeks, but either way, it just sits there. That's the idea with this bill. It's never going to have a realistic chance of becoming law, because we just don't have, the government won't allow the time for this to be discussed, and it would be a lot of work to get enough MPs to back it to make it law. And many will say, well, we can just do this through the Environment Bill, but it's there really just as a for MPs to be able to refer to it. So, for instance, when the Environment Bill comes back, hopefully we get our amendment tabled. Hopefully that means MPs have a chance to discuss it, and at that point, we'll be looking for Alistair Carmichael and other supportive MPs to draw attention to this and say, well, look, here's how this group of cross-party MPs all believe that this is a sensible approach to the problem. However, there's this huge gap between what this bill sets out as a gold standard and what you're proposing as a government in the Environment Bill. How are you going to close that gap? And so it's potentially embarrassing for a government to have their own MPs kind of signalling that they want the government to go further, even if those MPs might not be willing to go quite as far as rebelling. So yeah, couple of options there. And Greg, I think I saw you mentioned it would be good to share the text of the plastic pollution bill. I will definitely look for a way of doing that. Unfortunately, the links I have here are internal ones, but I can certainly send them. Maybe I'll try and send them to the email address you got there, and you can share them with the participants. But anyway, I've been talking for a long time. I'm really sorry to sort of squeeze the time we have for questions, but happy if that's what people, if that's what's useful. I'm here to be asked anything you like.
That's great. Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Sean. That was really, really useful. But I mean, I think it would be useful to sort of kind of get a picture of kind of how many MPs you kind of feel like are kind of on our side at the minute. Like, I mean, like I don't know, I don't know if you have a kind of general feeling in terms of sort of a general number of of MPs that you feel that are supportive towards what we're trying to push for in terms of these kind of plastic reduction targets. So do you kind of have a rough idea of how many supportive MPs we have?
I don't have. I actually, it's a really kind of this week, funnily enough, has been a real turning point, and the size of that turning point is something I'm not quite sure of. There are kind of groupings within political parties and also groupings within Parliament that that span political parties, and so that's one of the ways in which we try and sort of figure this out. So I right at the outset, actually, earlier this year, I set up a spreadsheet so that we could, as a group, as a coalition of allies, kind of pool our political intelligence, and that just had a lot of sort of proxies really for like indicating whether or not we thought an MP would be on side. And we got lots of useful data really from the campaigning that we've already done. This, Friends of the Earth plastic campaign has been running for, I think, about 3 years now, and things like the plastic pollution bill are a really good barometer to get a sense of which MPs are gonna back our asks, and we've got a kind of a range of other things. Greenpeace had a kind of a rivers pledge. There are some coalitions that continue to do a lot of work around kind of the sort of Brexit dimension of this. Greener UK had a kind of a similar kind of pledge, but obviously those things are easy to sign, and the difficult thing to do sometimes is to put your money where your mouth is, essentially. So one of the kind of most useful moments so far, I think, this Parliament was that rebellion on the agriculture bill, and that's I don't remember the numbers exactly, because I think that that happened while Parliament was in this kind of semi remote working phase. I can't remember what they called it, but MPs were voting remotely, some of them at least, and I remember looking at who had voted against the government and seeing Rishi Sunak, and thinking that's got to be a mistake. And there were definitely a couple of MPs who accidentally hit the wrong button. But I think there was a good sort of 20 plus, maybe even 30 off the top of my head. And that's not quite the number we need. I think we need to get over 40, and we want to have a sense that maybe more like 50 or 60 are threatening. Conservative MPs need to vote against the government for this change to happen. It's worth saying as well that the threat often is enough to persuade government to do things differently. So rather than go through the embarrassment of having lots of their own MPs vote against it, the government will often offer concessions, and that as long as those concessions are meaningful, then that's potentially a very good outcome. So it might not need to get to that kind of magic number that you would need to actually win, but if it starts to get close to it, then that gets onto the radar of government. They get worried. They start thinking, okay, what can we do by way of a concession to try and neutralise that that concern? So yeah, you've got groupings, like I mentioned, some of the groupings that you have within Parliament. More United is an interesting grouping. My MP here in Cardiff South and Penarth is involved in that grouping, and he's very actively and vocally opposed to incinerator proposals here, and we're hoping to meet with another member of that grouping. It's very sort of Labour dominated on the whole, but it is technically cross-party, and he's not able to do some of the stuff that we'd like him to because he's a shadow minister, but he's obviously got close relationships with others within that grouping and may be able to influence them that way. And another really interesting one is Conservative Environment Network. If you're not familiar with them, it's definitely worth looking into. I think they call it their caucus of MPs. I think other parliamentarians as well, actually. So I'll share a link quickly. A manifesto as well, so you can kind of see the sorts of things that they're calling for, and that's hopefully a useful starting place if you notice that your MP is a member of that grouping. Certainly worth dropping them a line and just asking directly, what do they intend to do about plastics in the environment bill, and that all helps because obviously there are conversations within these groups and priorities need to be agreed, and they can't do everything, and there's so much going on at the moment. It can be really difficult to just stay on top of everything. They have a very small staff who are stretched as our we at the moment at Friends of the Earth. So I think the more you can just kind of work on the mood music, I think, around this. So one of the concerns I've heard expressed is that the government's attention was on plastics. There was so much public concern around plastics after Blue Planet 2 that they were really feeling that they had to do stuff about it, and I think that's still the case, but sometimes politicians just need to be reminded that people still care about the issue, and I think that's enough to sometimes to kind of get things moving.
Yeah, Sean, I was just going to put this in the chat box. I saw a blog post from DEFRA last month, which I've just shared in the chat, saying that kind of obviously the government are looking at kind of trying to pick up this issue around plastics and stuff again. So it's kind of that it's obviously is on their agenda and things. So I think that'll be interesting. That at least it's on their agenda again. So it's not completely off their agenda at the minute. So
yeah.
Do you like? I mean, Kelly wrote a question: why have DEFRA not addressed prevention in their statement about waste management?
Yeah, so I joined a stakeholder workshop, I think it was called, and DEFRA are running 3 of those this month, and I found it really interesting to kind of ask a similar kind of question, and many others were asking similar kind of questions, and I think there's a kind of the process that you'll see in that kind of link that I've shared is that there'll be lots of kind of phases of this, and they were kind of open, shall I put it that way? They were sort of open to there being lots of kind of gaps or inadequacies in what they floated. It was not exactly a starter for 10, but they were they wanted to emphasize that this was the start of a process where stakeholder views would be taken into account. Then what would happen is that some of that would be fed to an expert panel to kind of look at these things in more detail. That panel is yet to be appointed, so there's still kind of a long way to go, but they were also encouraging stakeholders to suggest people that they might want included on that panel or to be considered for membership of that panel. And then my understanding is then we get to a point of public consultation. So yeah, quite a long road. And I guess the more sort of signals we can send at this stage that there's a huge gap in the middle of the targets that they're talking about, the better. I mean, the thing with the targets they've set out is they could work out well. There's just no guarantee that they will. And I think that's what we need to see. What I tried to do was to say, look, I can imagine the worst case scenario. I'm going to try and imagine the worst case scenario that these targets would allow to unfold. Yeah, they kind of acknowledge that that's a possibility with the way with the targets that they have in their current form. The other thing they mentioned was that this is a kind of iterative process, so it may be that we get these targets, we get some kind of target sorted, and they kick in, and then we start to see that there are kind of unintended consequences, or that they're insufficient in some way, or that the situation changes, and it means that they need to be revisited. And rightly, somebody asked, well, what's stopping government from just watering them down at the first opportunity? And there is there are some safeguards in place to try and make sure that that doesn't happen. So hopefully that's something I need to look at a bit more closely, but hopefully there is a process there that means they could be tightened, but maybe not weakened.
Yeah. I've just seen I've just posted another article, which was a more recent one about plastic bags, but at the bottom on the last statement in that DEFRA article, it says the government will introduce a new world leading tax on plastic packaging. Is that something that's going to be part of the environment bill? Do you know much about what that is?
So I'll admit I'm not totally across all of the different initiatives that and where they fit in terms of the environment bill or being introduced in other ways, but I am aware that this is a kind of this is a real risk. I think that the government is able to kind of point to some of these other interventions and say, look, it's fine because we've got our kind of ban on straws, we've got our ban on, even though many of these things have also been delayed because of COVID, there's still something they can point to, and a lot of that came up in DEFRA, in the DEFRA workshop I joined, which fair enough, it's action that they might not otherwise have taken. The issue with many of these things, I think, is that it's not a systemic solution. So it's a bit piecemeal. We can, and also there's kind of environmental justice dimensions to this, where you can imagine people just taking the hit with a tax. Although there's good evidence on some of the kind of plastic bag charges. But yeah, we don't want to get, ideally what we, especially at this stage, I think we don't want to get bogged down too much in kind of isolated interventions. What we need to see from government right now, because this is such a momentous piece of law, is a really coherent framework that will enable this problem just to be continuously improved upon. The risk with some of these things is kind of, there you go, problem solved, don't worry about it. And in the meantime, the scale of plastic production is quite scary. So the kind of projected increase in plastic production is looks almost exponential when you look at a graph of it, and you can see a lot of the kind of fossil fuel companies thinking ahead and thinking, okay, well, pretty soon it's going to become unacceptable for our product to be burnt. It's happening, and we still got tons of the stuff, and we need to find a way of using it. And it was a real eye opener for me when I watched the War on Plastics. I think the Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall and Anita documentary, and they showed this kind of tanker of fracked gas being transported from the US to Aberdeen, I think it was, and to be turned into plastic. And I really penny dropped for me then to realize just how connected some of these struggles are. And if you've not seen, I think you've screened the story of plastic, haven't you? And then that really took you into the kind of the connections all along that that kind of stream. And it just, all it does, I think, is it's also something, that if you are in touch with your elected representatives, it's worth joining the dots there if they're not aware of those connections themselves. I think there is much, a strong consensus on climate and plastic. If for any reason your MP isn't convinced about one, they might be convinced about the other, and it's quite a quick way to just kind of join those dots.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And is the deposit return scheme, is that going to be a part of the environment bill?
Again, I think that's that I'm not wholly sure whether that comes under that that heading, or whether it's kind of
okay. I
achieved by
think
the
I've
means.
just seen a DEFRA page that says that they're going to be holding a government page that says we're going to be holding a second consultation in 2020
Okay.
on the regulatory framework for introducing a deposit return scheme through secondary legislation.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look like it'll be part of the environment bill, it'll be kind of wanting to come through as secondary
There we go.
legislation.
Yeah, I think as much as possible they're shifting stuff that just to kind of, because time is so tight. So I'll just mention,
I think
actually,
in terms of like introducing deposit return scheme, that they're talking about 2023, which is way too late. Really, we need to be seeing that a lot come in sooner.
Yeah. One thing, I think Toby Perkins, is that right, is your local MP? A colleague happened to mention to me just how good he'd been in terms of our fracking campaign. Just mentioning fracking then made me think of it. And I think he's Toby's a shadow minister, if I'm right. So
Yeah.
it might be, he also might not be able to sponsor the plastic pollution bill and might be constrained in other ways. But hopefully he's aware of those links between fracking and plastics, and if he's able to also speak to colleagues, that's another thing. If your elected representative says, look, I'm in a job that means I can't do all the stuff you're asking me to do, there's something that every MP can do, and they do all the time, is speak to colleagues and kind of impress upon them how important an issue this is, and what a goal and opportunity we have at the moment to kind of get it right and really put something in place that we can be confident is up to the job, up to the scale of the challenge.
Yeah. So like we've got in Chesterfield, we've got a meeting planned with our MP on next Friday. So we'll be kind of talk to him about this, but we really recommend that anyone else around the country also organises a meeting with their MP, because I know and it seems so easy now with to do a meeting with your MP via Zoom, whatever. You don't even need to sort of leave the house to even like meet with your MP now. So it just seems so easy, and but I know that we've had some pushback, and I know some groups in Derbyshire tried to arrange meetings with their MPs at the end of June as part of the Time Is Now mass lobby in Parliament, and a lot of MPs were sort of even refusing to meet with their constituents. So that was, so Sarah Tynes in Derbyshire. That was a real challenge in terms of trying to kind of get a meeting with her. And it took sort of, but it kind of ends up resulting in a group of people now having a conversation about how to kind of put pressure on her, which is really good.
Fantastic.
But Oliver's mentioned about this Caroline Ansell letter.
Yeah, I was just drafting a quick message. Oliver, sorry, I just thanks for the reminder. I, funnily enough, did some an interview for BBC Southeast a couple of weeks ago, and just following some like amazing cleanup operation going on around Beachy Head. A group called Bass Explore, working with some of the kind of local Coast Guard and just picking up plastic that was completely really hard to kind of reach. And it was great to hear from some members of the group afterwards, and I was just pointing them towards Eastbourne Friends of the Earth, who I've worked with in the past and who have done some really good work on plastics. And I was thinking that getting together in that way and maybe some joint kind of lobbying of MPs in the area could work really well. I can see you've got a hat. Sorry, Oliver.
Yeah, could I come on? Can you hear me?
Definitely,
Yes.
yeah.
You can hear me, good. Yeah, thank you. Eastbourne, I work with Norm, his name is.
Yes.
And it is fantastic. It's so, I've been down there with him. It's so dangerous because you've got the high cliffs and you've got tidal, and it's also very, very rough terrain. So we're working together, and Caroline Ansell is our MP.
Great.
And she works with us. She's coming to do a beach clean weekend after next, for example.
Amazing.
And so, the potential is enormous there for us to get. We collaborate a lot, so
Fantastic.
the potential's there.
Oh, that's really that's great to hear. I think Andy, if he's still coordinating Eastbourne Friends of the Earth,
Yes,
done lots of great. So I think if you guys join forces, you probably got some.
He's, if I may interrupt, he's a director of Plastic Free Eastbourne.
There we
Andy.
go. The dots are already joined, and I didn't even realise. So well, all I can say really is keep up the amazing work, and do let me know how if Caroline is interested in doing more. Always happy to hear how we can find ways for her to do that sort of stuff. And celebrate what she is doing if she's already fully on board.
Fully on board is a good question. Fully on board.
Yeah. Sean, do you want to write your? I don't know if you're happy to share your email with people here, but maybe
sure.
You want to share your email with people so they can kind of stay in touch with you. Ashley, do you want to unmute yourself?
Hello. You mentioned earlier on about sort of, obviously we know that recycling isn't the sort of be all and end all, but I personally find it a disgrace that the things that we can recycle in Bolsover potentially can't be recycled in Barnsley. So do you know if there's anything happening or anything in the bills that have been put forward to join up the 39 different rules that apply sort of across the whole nation to have one sort of general recycling program rather than 39 individual ones?
Oh, good question. Yeah, and I agree with you. It is a disgrace, isn't it? I don't actually know specifically about whether there's anything in the bill. I guess what we'd hope is by putting this target, getting a target in there, it then incentivizes that kind of join up. Because I don't know who it benefits, but I guess it's easier at the moment to just allow that sort of patchwork to exist. Nobody's feeling any particular pressure to address that, even if it's kind of really suboptimal for pretty much all players. I'm sorry I don't have the answer to that, but I've popped my email in there. I'll be in and out of work a bit, so you might get a bounce back from me, but I'll do what I can to get back to you if you do want to follow up with me by email. Apologies in advance if it takes me a while.
Yeah, no worries. Did you see Laura had a question above just on the chat? I don't know if you saw that. She said, but if the UK plastic recycling infrastructure is not up to the mark until we can reduce the amount of plastic used by government, what is going to change?
Just trying to check I've got my head around that. If the UK I'm not totally sure I've
'cause
understood it. Sorry,
it just kind
Laura.
of follows on the same point, then, doesn't it? Really, about what Ashley was saying in terms of recycling infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, this is one of the reasons we're really pushing for like a paradigm shift in the way that our economy works. You know, we even if you were to vastly improve the recycling system, which we need to do, you know, it's an important piece of the puzzle. I'm certainly not saying you know, we can forget about recycling, but even if it was world class, I think it's never going to be able to cope with the kind of plastic we're seeing just being produced in the way that it's being produced and the way that it's being used and disposed of. So yeah, I think we want to see. I mean, a lot of the work we've done with the campaign, some of the stuff I've kind of been most excited by, and now is really being kind of continued by other organisations, is really trying to kind of take that step into a future where we have a better system. So reuse, I think, is keep an eye on City to Sea in particular. I think they've been doing amazing work throughout the pandemic. Great work on personal protective equipment. Great work on kind of ensuring that we stick with reusables, because I think there was some real fear mongering and some misinformation when the crisis first hit, that reusables were in some way riskier than single-use plastics, and so I think there's been a bit of a step back, but they're doing some incredible work, and I think it's demonstrating, you know, better ways of doing things. So not expecting everybody to bring their own, you know, carry a bag of reusable cups and plates and cutlery, carting that around with you everywhere, but having a system where you can pick up a reusable thing and drop it off somewhere else, because, you know, that's not too much to hope for. So excuse me a second, I'm just going to let the dog in because they're scratching at the door.
No worries. Yeah, definitely. I just sent a link on the chat about there's this new all-party parliamentary group on microplastics, which is really, it's just been set up, and I think they had their first meeting on Monday.
Yeah.
Which is really good, and that's really good news that we've kind of got that, and hopefully, you know, if MPs are going to be joining that group, then sure they're going to be on our side in terms of the environment better as well. So
yeah, and it's great to see, you know, that's the Women's Institute kind of leading that initiative, and they've just been an amazing ally, not just on this campaign, but we have a bee cause campaign trying to save bees, and yeah, just couldn't wish for a better ally. And so yeah, if you have a Women's Institute near you, I would thoroughly recommend getting in touch with them. And yeah, I've had colleagues say actually microplastics was the thing that really broke through for them to when they realized, okay, that's why all these other solutions aren't going to cut it, is because, you know, this stuff is really, really hard to handle once it gets out there. So let's not put it out there in the first place. You know, and I think that's why we're focusing so kind of ruthlessly really on this kind of prevention point. Yeah, not to say the other stuff isn't important, but we need to make sure we get that right while we've got the opportunity to.
Definitely. I wonder if there's some kind of opportunities for sort of like kind of some kind of like, I don't know whether, it'd be interesting to see whether there's some opportunity for some kind of creative stunts or something to try and put pressure on some of the MPs, you know, in terms of sort of plastics and things. But yeah, I'm hoping that we can kind of anyone signed up to any one of the organisations through Friends of the Earth or Surfers Against Social, be kind of, or Greenpeace, will kind of be kept informed of what's going on. But I feel like we need to kind of put the pressure on all sides and stuff, really, don't we?
Yeah, and you know, I think if your MP is really supportive, it's kind of, yeah, like I mentioned with Caroline Ansell, you know, if that's the case, is kind of just as important to kind of amplify that success, I think, and celebrate that support. You know, so that MPs can see, okay, well, you know, I'm not just going to get told off for not supporting something, but I'm actually, you know, this is something I'm gonna be kind of recognized for, you know. So yes, like you said, creativity, all for it. I think the letter I showed earlier was just something that was a quick off the shelf tactic. If you're, you know, just looking for something to do, you don't have huge amounts of time. Luckily, you know, something that can be coordinated remotely still, and so yeah, that's just there as a kind of quick thing. But please let your imaginations run wild and be safe, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. Does anyone else have any questions? I think because we need to look at wrapping things up. I don't know if yeah, anyone else has anything else to say. But it's great to see lots of people talking in the chat right now, which is really cool. So all the links that you guys share on here, I'll save the chat and I'll send it around to everyone at the end. So yeah, I think it seems that recycling seems to be a real big issue, doesn't it? And that's a massive issue. We need to kind of get right. Yeah. So does anyone have any other questions before we kind of finish up? But like we've shared lots of links. I mean, there's lots of kind of things people can do at the minute. You know, like even if you can just do an individual letter, you can find on the Surfers Against Sewage website. There's a great letter template on there that I've posted the link in there. You can write to your MP about the Environment Bill. You know, if you've got a bit more time, you can do the Friends of the Earth signatory letter where you can get people to sign it. You know, local businesses and organisations to sign your letter. And then just, yeah, you know, I think if we can all try and get meetings with our MPs again and start to put the pressure up again on this, I think that'd be really, really, really great if we can, you know, all of us who have joined can have a meeting with our MP, then it could really make a real big difference. So, Sean, did you say that they need to kind of wrap up the Environment Bill by the end of the year? Because that doesn't give us long then, does it?
No, and you know, and actually, if it comes back towards the end of this month or the start of next, committee stage will probably get whipped through pretty quickly. Report stage won't be far behind. I mean, they are talking about trying to sort of condense this stuff. So yeah, it really is a case of kind of sooner the better. And hopefully we get that kind of momentum going in the right direction.
Definitely, yeah. So we haven't got a long left. Basically, we need to kind of act quickly on this.
All hands on deck.
Yeah, definitely. So if everyone can send a letter to their MP and that kind of thing, it's really important. So yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Well, thanks, Sean, for joining us tonight. It was really, really great, and it's
my pleasure.
Yeah, really, really useful. Just to kind of we just need to kind of highlight this and kind of get this out. And I'll try and work out a way of uploading this to YouTube. Maybe try and split the live one and then this recording as well. So. Yeah, I think Kelly. I think just go for releasing any kind of launching any plastic-free group at the minute. You know, plastics is a real big issue right now. You know, we've just had the war on plastics. You know, David Attenborough has been talked about quite a lot with the Extinction Program. So you know, it does feel kind of a really good time to kind of capitalize on this moment now, where we're kind of, you know, there was sort of quite a lot of grief, I think, from the Extinction Program on Sunday, and it's the same thing again with sort of the war on plastics and stuff. So, you know, we need to really kind of capitalize on this moment that people kind of are feeling like they need to kind of do something. For example, I'll just give you an idea. Like I put on a Facebook group like a post about please share your pet hates with about plastics in supermarkets. And we must have had about 30 comments from 30 different people who commented, who have sort of applied back with sort of their pet hates on plastics and things. So it does feel to me that we are kind of at this kind of time where a lot of people are wanting to talk about this and kind of get involved. And we've obviously got the Great British Spring Clean, the September Clean that's taking place at the minute. We've got Marine Conservation Society are doing their kind of clean up as well at the minute as well. And then the Surfers Against Sewage clean up plastic protests as well. There's lots of kind of things to get involved in, and I would recommend anyone who's not involved to kind of check out the plastic free protest on the Surfers Against Sewage website, which is lots of really good stuff, really good actions that you can take from just the return to offender action. I really like I just feel like the return to offender action is really great in terms of just if there's hundreds and hundreds of people taking pictures of branded litter on your streets and then using social media to tag in the brands, these brands are going to really start to feel the pressure. It's just one person might not be much, but if hundreds and hundreds of people start using like Twitter to kind of ask Coca-Cola or Lucasade or Nestle to really crack down on their plastic packaging, it's really going to start kind of getting them to feel the heat again. And I know the Break Free, if you're not also another one to look up is Break Free from Plastic movement as well, because they've got another brand audit that's taken place this autumn as well. And again, we'll see kind of data coming back from all over the world on who are the most polluting organizations. So do check that out as well. But stay in touch. We'll send you around all the links. There's lots of kind of things to get involved in right now, but I just really want to say thanks a lot for joining, and thanks for Sean for joining us, and thanks to you for coming tonight. So do get involved. Lots of things to get involved in and share. So thanks a lot for everyone, and we'll see you. Just to let you know, we're having another meeting. We're having another meeting next month. Just before you go, we're having another meeting next month, which is on the October. It's the third Wednesday of the month, so the 21st of October. We'll hopefully be joined by Alice from the charity Hubbub, and they've done some really great work at the minute about recycling on the go. So like looking at specifically like sort of plastic packaging, so like the kind of the supermarket packaging and the sort of the plastic bottle recycling. They've kind of been doing some sort of tests, some trial runs all over the country in terms of trying to crack down on sort of plastic pollution on streets. So they're kind of looking at ways of how we can collect up, how we can recycle more to maybe rather than sort of putting things in the bin, it's about how can we look at collecting some of these items to recycle and properly. So that's going to be on the 21st of October, and you can see on our YouTube, on our Eventbrite page, there's details on there for that. But that's again at 7 o'clock on the 21st. I'll send some details around on that as well. But yeah, thanks a lot for joining, and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks all. Bye for now.